We've been getting a lot of questions recently on how we do our podcast, and we've released the one episode of Podcasting in Basic, but I'd like to give you another episode because I've had to recently learn how to do this whole Pro Tools thing. And that's what this episode is going to be about, learning how to use Pro Tools. Now, it's a great way to record podcasts if you're wanting to do your own The Old Republic podcast, or if you're wanting to create even a guild podcast, because due to the whole recent guild headquarters launch, guilds are starting to spring up and people want to have a way to communicate with the rest of their guild, and a podcast is a great way to do that. So in today's episode, I want to give you guys an idea of what to expect if you're wanting to go through the route of using Pro Tools to record this. It's not that challenging of a thing. There is a lot of learning that goes with it, and it can be frustrating if you don't completely understand what to do. But for the most part, as long as you follow the step-by-step instructions, everything works when it's all said and done. Now, when it comes to using Pro Tools, one thing that you're going to need for your computer is some sort of interface or input box. I would recommend getting this complete Avid package. It comes with the interface box itself and a copy of Pro Tools. Now, there are different packages you can get. There's one that has one microphone input, which runs about $330. Or you can step up to the one that I have, which has allows two different microphone inputs in it. And the reason that this is important is if you're wanting to do something that's going to have two people in the same room, it's an easier setup. But basically, what you're paying for the most part is Pro Tools itself, because each one of these includes a copy of Pro Tools. Now, the cool thing about these inboxes well, it's a good thing and a bad thing, is you cannot actually run Pro Tools without having this box connected to the computer. So this allows you to install Pro Tools on multiple computers, but you can't run it or edit anything unless you detects this box being hooked up to it in the first place. So this is something you might want to keep in mind when you're deciding what's best for you. I would encourage you to look at the different options available. Do you only need one microphone input, or is two microphone inputs it's going to fit your cost more? But it's something that you want to keep in mind when you purchase it. So what we have here is your actual copy of Pro Tools. This is pretty much what you're paying for the most part when you purchase this interface system. Pro Tools is it's simple to install, but you have to follow the instructions. You can't do anything ahead of time. If you try to cut corners or take that one extra step, it can mess the whole installation process up. Believe me, I've learned from this the hard way. When it comes to actually hooking up your inbox, you do not want to do that until the installation process tells you to do that. It's pretty easy to do though. You put the disk in your computer and it pops up this display menu, and then you just click the Install Pro Tools button. And once you do that, it's going to go through a series of processes or steps and ask you some questions and stuff, and then you just follow the steps. It's very easy to do. Sometimes if it messes up, you might want to uninstall the program and reinstall it. It might help things. But once you get everything completely installed, restart your computer and you should be able to open Pro Tools normally. So this is the actual interface box itself here. As you can tell, you've got a list of different options on the front. These are what control the two microphone inputs here. This is for your 48 volt power, which is important to have on if you're wanting to record. This right here is the master control volume knob for any sort of output that you want. And back here is a list of all, well, not a list, but here's all your different inputs. You've got the two mic inputs. Here's 1 and 2. You've got spit up inputs if you want to use those. Here's your mono outs or your monitor outs. You've got MIDI input and output as well. And then right here's your USB connection. When you first install this, like I said, you don't want to hook anything up, and you want to wait until it tells you to actually plug in the box itself, and then it installs all the drivers in the correct format in the correct order during the installation process. If you try to jump this step and hook the box up ahead of time, it's going to give you a lot of problems when you try installing the program. But as you can tell, everything is very simply laid out. You've got all your different options labeled here on the front, a lot of which I don't even know what to do with just quite yet. And a lot of this I don't even think you're really going to need if you're wanting to do something as simple as a podcast. But it's good to know. Look through your instruction manual if you get time, and you might be able to find a way to make your podcast sounding better when you finish the final product. Now once you get Pro Tools installed and running, comes the part of actually setting up to record. Now to do this, you want to go to a new session, and you want to, I would recommend creating a blank session, saving everything as a WAV file, and doing it at 24-bit depth, and you want to set your sample rate. Now this is very important, to 44.1 kilohertz per second. If you get this at a different sample rate and you try to add sounds or any type of music to your podcast, and it's not necessarily the same sample rate, you might run into an issue to where it might speed the music up to match the sample rate recording, and it can create a big mess. So it's very important that everything is set to 44.1, just because that's kind of like the industry standard when it comes to recording. Once you do this, you click OK, and it's going to ask you to save. So we're going to just do something here. We're going to call this MER test episode. And so we save that. It's asking me if I want to save my previous session. I'm going to tell it no. And you get this blank screen. The first thing you want to do is you need some, as you notice there's nothing here, and you need some tracks. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to tell it you want a new audio track to record. So you go up, click new track. We're going to create one track. We're going to have this be a mono audio track, and it's going to be in samples. After you do that, you hit create. Then it creates this new audio track, which you can, record with. Now, typically, if you're going to record, the first thing you got to do is you got to set everything up correctly. Otherwise, when you try to go do it, you got to tell the microphone in channel 1 to record to this track. So that way, when you hit the record buttons and talk into it, it'll actually pick up what you're saying. In order to do this, you want to go up to Window, Mix, and it's going to bring up this mixer window over here. Now, if you zoom in on here and you look at this, there's an I/O for input/output. The first box is set to, you want to click on it, and you want to make sure it's under Interface Analog 1. And what that does is it makes sure the microphone plugged into the Analog 1 input on this interface will actually be hooked up into this track when you record. So when I press the arm button and I press the record button here, and then I hit the play button to actually start the recording process, it'll pick up everything through the first microphone, or the mic that's plugged into channel 1. So if I sit here and I start talking into the microphone like this, as you can tell, it's picking up whatever I'm saying, and that's how you're able to record everything. If you're going to do this with 2 different mics, you would do it the same way, only you want to make sure that the second mic for the second track is actually hooked up to Analog 2, and so on. So one thing when it comes to recording a podcast is making sure all the levels are mixed and balanced. You don't want to have one microphone completely dominating the other microphone in terms of volume. You want to try to have everything at this even ratio. Now there's this little kind of simple way to do this in Pro Tools, and it's under each one of the tracks there's a little arrow, and when you click on this arrow, there's a tab called Volume. Now you notice there's this black line, and that kind of shows where the volume level is for that track. Now in order to change this, you come up here to your quick options and select the hand. Once you select the hand, you come back down to the volume track, and you can click on it, and it'll create like a little white dot. Now what this does is it allows you to control the volume from that point. So if you want to create, let's say you want to change the volume, you put like a start point and a stop point, and you can pull the original one down, and as time progresses, it'll slowly decrease the volume level to match where you've adjusted it to, and then it'll slowly start to increase it to where you've adjusted it to over time. This is a quick and simple way you can edit the audio tracks or mix the volume in Pro Tools itself, and it'll save you a lot of time. And you want to be sure everything is matched up and everything is balanced before you bounce your final project. So once you mix everything down and it sounds good and you're comfortable with releasing an episode that in that final version, the next thing you want to do is come over here to the File menu, and you want to go to Bounce To. And then after Bounce To, you select Disk, And then it's going to tell you what you want your bounce source to be. Make sure it's analog 1 or analog 1 and 2. I would always encourage you to do file type as a wave. Well, it depends how you're wanting to release it. I convert it to MP3 in a different program. You can actually do it as an MP3 here. That might save you a step. But I like to go through and do it, convert it to the WAV file to MP3 through iTunes, so that way I can add album art to it, give it its ID tags, and all that kind of things. If you're not going to worry about doing that, then you can go on and do the MP3 process here. But until you actually convert it to an MP3, I would keep it in WAV format as much as possible, because you want that uncompressed sound and you won't lose audio quality. So I'm going to select WAV. I always do stereo interlaced, or interleaved, I'm sorry. Bit depth 24, and once again, make sure your sample rate is 44.1. Once you do this, I do make sure when under the conversion options it says convert after bounce, click the bounce button. Then it's going to ask you to actually save your final product somewhere. So find where you want to save it, call it what you want to save it. So I'm going to call this MER test, hit save, and immediately it's going to start bouncing this to disk. Now the thing about Pro Tools that's kind of weird is it does it all in real time. So if your podcast is 45 minutes long and you need to bounce a 45-minute podcast to your hard drive, it will take 45 minutes to do that. So be sure to allow yourself enough time to bounce this. If you're doing a podcast and you think, oh, I gotta get this up in the next 5 minutes, you're not gonna be able to, you're gonna have to plan ahead. You're not gonna have time to do that. So once you select bounce to disk, it'll go through, render the whole bounce the whole podcast out in real time. You can actually listen to it on your monitors as it's bouncing. After 45 minutes or however long your podcast is and it's completed, it'll end, you can save it, you can close Windows, and then you'll have a finished product. So I hope this actually gave you a better understanding how to use Pro Tools on a very basic introductory level. If you have more questions, feel free to ask me. You can send those at mossizeradio@gmail.com. I will try to answer them the best I can. I'm still learning this as I go as well. Pro Tools can be a bit overwhelming at times. I encourage you to be sure to have your Google search window nearby, because you might be searching a lot of things at the spur of a moment, asking, what is this? How do I do this? Pro Tools might pop something up randomly, or might stop recording because of buffering issues or something weird like that. There's a lot of learning that goes along with this, but hopefully after watching this, or maybe rewatching it a couple times, you have a good enough idea of how you could install Pro Tools, record a basic podcast, and bounce the podcast to your computer. Think fits you the most, or I can't keep a straight face. I hear the kitties in there.
Oh, here he comes.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh no!
You're on the podcast, Kitty.
Come here.
Kitty cast.
Oh, your sister's gonna get jealous if she finds out you're on the podcast. Oh, here she comes.
She coming?
Who's that? Hey, we're in here.
Valen. Oh, there's Valen.
Come here, Valen.
This is Valen.
Hey guys.
Oh, now we're gonna fight. With every box, you get a free kitten.
Yes.
I think those are.
And if you get the version of Pro Tools that allows for 2 microphone inputs, they give you 2 free kittens.